joined by the Deputy Minister Mashego Dlamini, as well as by the DG Zain Tango. And so I won't waste any time and hand over to the Minister to lead us. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much, Lunga. Deputy Minister Mashego Dlamini, so glad you're here. Director General Dango, welcome back. And all DIRCO senior officials and ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you for joining us at this media briefing. We thought we should do the usual, which is a beginning of the year media briefing. And in particular, you would be aware that this is a very important year for South Africa. We're celebrating 30 years of democracy. And in our view, as the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, we already have a great deal to celebrate as a country, as we have achieved some major successes that position our country as a champion of human rights and international law. I believe that Madiba would have wanted us to continue to make human rights central to our foreign policy, and we've attempted in all ways that we can to act on this, particularly this current administration. We have affirmed our commitment to fight for the rights of the oppressed and to do so in the highest bodies of our multilateral system. In fact, just today, I've had a really excellent meeting with the personal envoy of the Secretary General to Western Sahara and Morocco, Mr. Stefan de Mistura, and this just serves to continue the role that we hope to play in advancing the cause of those who continue to suffer harm and disadvantage. As South Africans, all of us tried to work hard in the struggle against apartheid, and we all would recall that many stood with us in international solidarity, and it is therefore our view that it is correct that today we as South Africans stand with others who are oppressed. In a sense, the way in which we conducted our struggle for freedom has imposed a particular obligation on us to do the same for others, and not to just enjoy being free and having access to human rights and a wide range of opportunities offered by freedom, but to have regard to those who don't enjoy what we have, and some of whom may actually have supported us even when they themselves were living in conditions that were dismal. So it is in this frame that I think we take on some of these obligations. I'm often asked why, and I do try to explain this particular responsibility that South Africa has of having framed this notion of international solidarity and used it to good effect, and how now we've got to make the concept live by also shaping international solidarity in the interests of others. What we thought we'd do in this media briefing is present some of the work we've been doing this year, and perhaps give a sense of what we think are some of the key areas of focus that would form a large part of our work in this year of elections. So for me, it's a certainty of briefing of the first half of the year. We don't know what the seventh administration might consider doing. We will focus today on our international work and really look at four key areas. I think we should have added a fifth, but I will speak to it briefly. The first is to report on the recent summits of the non-aligned movement and the G77 plus China. These meetings were held just a week and a half ago in Uganda. And then second, to speak to the case that is before the International Court of Justice involving our assertion that Israel is committing genocide in the war on Gaza. The third is to reflect on the upcoming African Union summit, which will be held in February in the next few in a week or so. And then the fourth is to speak briefly to our handing over of the chair of BRICS to the Russian Federation. And then fifthly, what we haven't dealt with here, but which I must mention, is to also say in our work this year, we shall be anticipating our assumption of the chair of G20 for 2025. We're working on the early aspects of that responsibility, but I think it is important that we make reference to it because it's really going to form a large part of the work that we will initiate, but which will be concluded by the next administration. So first, on the recent summits of NAM and G77 in China, the summits took place in Kampala, Uganda, from the 19th to the 22nd of January. The Non-Aligned Movement Summit identified 5 priority areas for focus. These were regional and international peace and security, the fight against terrorism, the issues of migration and humanitarian crises associated with this, as well as the issue of security in migration, as well as human trafficking, and our progress as the non-aligned movement countries in implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. In our South African statement to the non-aligned movement presented by President Ramaphosa, the President confirmed that South Africa will remain steadfast in advancing its non-aligned approach to the maintenance of international peace and security by advocating always for the peaceful political settlement of disputes and for inclusive dialogue between countries in conflict. The non-aligned movement also had the great excitement of welcoming its first new member in 13 years, and that was the Republic of South Sudan, which now brings the total membership of NAM to 121 state parties. Following the non-aligned movement meeting, I led the South African delegation to the G77 and China summit, which was held under the theme, Leaving No One Behind. The G77 and China group is also known as the South Summit. It is the largest negotiating bloc in the United Nations body, representing most developing countries and over 80% of the world's population. The focus on the summit was on enhancing South-South cooperation in the areas of trade, investment, sustainable development, responses to climate change, poverty eradication measures, and fully extracting opportunity from the digital economy. We had a really excellent summit with very good outcomes from both the NAM deliberations as well as the G77 and China. And I think we remain as a fairly well united body of countries that share perspectives that are common on a number of issues, but there are areas of difference. But I think what is really noteworthy is that we are able to robustly discuss with each other and arrive at agreed perspectives on various matters. If you look at the final declarations of both, you will see common areas of deliberation between the two summits And then key in the deliberations were the matters of our perspectives as developing countries on the responses to climate change, the responses of the wealthy nations to their responsibilities in supporting developing countries to address the climate change impact, issues of the war against in Gaza, which is really a war against the people of Palestine, also came up from a great deal of discussion. We also concluded on reform of the United Nations Security Council, on which there are very strong feelings among non-NAM members, as well as the G77 and China. We really pushed in the final declaration for conclusive action on this matter of UN reform. Then I turned to the case before the ICJ regarding what we believe is Israel's genocide in the war on Gaza. Some of you would now know that at a special cabinet meeting that we held on the 8th of December last year, we decided as government that South Africa should institute legal proceedings at the International Court of Justice against Israel for, we believe, violating its obligations under the Geneva Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. You would all be aware of some of the facts surrounding this war on Gaza. Recent figures by Oxfam indicate that the average daily killing of Palestinians by the Israeli military since October 7th exceeds the daily death toll of any major conflict in recent years. That the deaths of children are almost incomparable, both in terms of actual numbers killed and the rate at which children have been killed. More journalists, you would know better than we do, have been killed in Gaza in the last 100 days than were killed during the Second World War and the Vietnam War. So having looked at a range of information and data before us, Cabinet was persuaded by the sheer immorality and illegality of the actions of the Israeli government that we had to act. There was consensus in that meeting that South Africa should approach the highest judicial organ of the United Nations to seek an end to the mass killing of Palestinians and to stop the wholesale destruction of civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings, hospitals, schools, bakeries, water and electricity facilities. From the outset, our concerns have been centered on the values and principles of our Constitution, a Constitution which places a premium on the right to life, the right to human dignity, and which sets out the human rights which should be enjoyed by all persons. So following the cabinet decision, we then had to work very hard to ensure that we were able to institute and submit our application. On December 29th, South Africa filed its application to institute proceedings against Israel, as well as our request for the court to determine a set of provisional measures. We're all aware the matter was heard in The Hague on the 11th and 12th of January this year, particularly at that time in relation to the request for provisional measures. The substantive matter of whether genocide has been committed will be addressed in the merits aspect of the case. On January 26th, the court delivered its order on South Africa's request for provisional measures. Whilst not all the provisional measures that were requested by South Africa were granted, crucial measures that will contribute to the protection of Palestinians were granted. The court was near unanimous in its decision, in its order for provisional measures, These included one, that Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent all acts of genocide as contained in Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, including, and I quote, the killing of members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, and then imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Second, Israel must prevent and punish direct and public incitement to commit genocide. And I must say, with this particular point, the court went into some detail with evidence of statements of incitement that have emanated from leading government officials within the administration of Israel. Third, that Israel is required to take effective measures to provide urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance. Fourth, that it must ensure effective measures are taken to prevent the destruction of evidence and ensure its preservation. And fifthly, that Israel is required to provide a report to the court on the measures it has taken to give effect to these provisional measures within 1 month. While South Africa had called for the suspension of Israeli military operations in Gaza, the court did not grant this provisional measure. The decision overall by the court marks, we believe, a decisive victory for international law and a significant milestone in the search for justice for the people of Palestine. It also affirms the importance of global governance institutions, including organs of the United Nations. It remains vital for us as member states to ensure that we respect and implement the decisions of the court. And I suppose what confronts us now is, what do we do if there is no implementation? And that is the question all nations must answer today, because it is a body of the United Nations that has set out these provisional measures, not the South African government or South Africa on its own. It is the International Court of Justice. And if its orders are not respected, what does this mean for every other government that commits atrocities against a people? This is the big question that confronts us at the global community today. The finding, we think, also makes it clear that it is plausible that genocide is taking place against the Palestinian people in Gaza. You would have heard the court's president actually saying this. Third states must therefore also act independently and immediately to prevent genocide by Israel and to ensure that they, as third states, are not themselves involved in violation of the Genocide Convention by aiding or assisting in the commission of genocide. This necessarily imposes an obligation on all states to cease funding and facilitating Israel's military actions, which, as the court has indicated, are plausibly genocidal. As South Africa, we will continue to do everything within our own power to preserve the existence of the Palestinian people as a group. We will do what we can to seek the ending of all acts of apartheid and genocide against the Palestinian people, and to work with them toward the realization of their collective right to self-determination. Because, as former President Nelson Mandela declared so stoutly, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. and we can't ennoble President Mandela in some aspects and then neglect other aspects of his political beliefs. The UN peace and security architecture, as we can see today, is clearly not able to give effect to the right to self-determination of the Palestinian people, and has of course dismally failed to protect them from grave war crimes and the threat of genocide, which has necessitated concerned states to turn to the judicial institution of the United Nations. If we fail through the judicial institution, we must ask what protects us. South Africa welcomes the support expressed by several countries, and we encourage those states that are so inclined to approach the court to intervene in the proceedings in support of our case so as to send a strong message to the international community that the situation in the Gaza Strip is indefensible. Several countries spoke to me at the summits in Uganda indicating their intention to take these steps. But I am still waiting for the public action. But there are a number that have indicated a commitment to join us. On the upcoming African Union Summit, all of you know I familiarly report on our country's foreign policy having at its core the advancement of the African agenda. We place great importance on our participation in African Union summits, and we will be very active in the next one, which will take place on the 17th and 18th of February in Addis Ababa. The summit will be held under the theme we adopted for 2024, which is Educate an African, Fit for the 21st Century, building resilient educational systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning in Africa. Last year, the African Union finalized the 10-year review of the first 10 years of Agenda 2063. A key recommendation in that review report is that African Union member states have to accelerate implementation of the Agenda 2063 17 key flagship projects, which are aimed specifically at fast-tracking continental integration, in particular trade and market integration, free movement of people, as well as infrastructure development. One of the flagship projects in which South Africa is playing a leading role is the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AFCFTA, which serves as a milestone development in the evolution of the African Union. We are particularly pleased that President Ramaphosa today officially witnessed the launch of South Africa's first shipment and preferential trading under the AFCFTA at the port of Durban. This is a historic occasion in the life of the free trade agreement. President Ramaphosa is also expected to attend and participate in a number of high-level committee meetings of the Assembly of the African Union. These include the meeting of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, which will be held to reaffirm Africa's position on climate change as advocated during the COP28 summit held in the UAE last year. In his capacity as chairperson of the Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative, President Ramaphosa annually holds a meeting of participating countries on the margins of the African Union Summit to provide a progress report on African infrastructure projects under the remit of Agenda 2063. The initiative aims to enhance infrastructure development in sectors such as transport, ICT, water and sanitation, and energy in our own country, throughout the SADC region and the continent. And it is critical to the implementation of the Free Trade Area Agreement. Lastly, on the margins of the summit, the President is also expected to chair a high-level meeting of the Committee of Five on South Sudan to review and provide political guidance on the progress made in the implementation of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. I'm pleased that today I held a very productive meeting with a task team we have established to support Deputy President Mashakile as President Ramaphosa's special envoy to South Sudan. The team will work with the Deputy President on the ground and serve as facilitators to ensure that all the necessary steps of the revitalized agreement are acted upon, implemented in order to lead South Sudan successfully into the election in the agreement, which is supposed to occur in December 2024. So that team will be leaving in this weekend to proceed to Juba, begin the process of supporting them in this role of special envoy, but to also provide multidisciplinary support to South Sudan in implementing the various aspects. We had Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE confirmed as full members of BRICS. You would be aware that Argentina has written to indicate that they will not act on this successive application by the previous administration to become full members of BRICS, and we accept their decision, particularly given that there are 34 more countries that have now written to Russia expressing interest in becoming BRICS members. The BRICS foreign ministers were also tasked to develop a BRICS partner country model to accommodate the 17 countries that were not accepted as full members of BRICS. And we as foreign ministers are working on this reading. The BRICS summit also agreed that finance ministers of BRICS countries, as well as Reserve Bank governors, should consider the use of local currency for payments between ourselves and for the development of international platforms of payments to really redress what we regard as a rather unfair and costly international payment system, which largely uses the dollar and doesn't really make use of other currencies. And it's our view, as we expand in BRICS, that there is potential for use of those currencies of the BRICS countries, and that we should look at whether we can devise a framework for this. So the finance ministers and the central bank governors have been, I believe, giving attention to this matter, and they will report to the summit in Russia this year. We also agreed as the BRICS summit that we would work concretely at advancing and articulating BRICS support for Security Council reform. This was one of the first times that we had our thought on this matter at the BRICS countries. South Africa, we've always advocated for reform, and all the BRICS We also established the BRICS Youth Council and inaugurated it and had excellent contributions from the Youth Council formation, which really bodes well for the future of BRICS. We anticipate that these outcomes will continue to receive support from Russia as it enters its work as the 2024 chair of BRICS. And I must say already, Russia is showing a great deal of energy when it embraces for all the BRICS work that we're undertaking this year. So I'll stop at this point and we open up to any comments. All right, so move up.
Thank you, Minister, very much. And I see no intent, so these are veteran journalists who know what to do. So I think it can take me, the Minister, with your permission, about 3 rounds. I will start with the first row here, from Karen to Karen.
Thank you very much, Minister. You mentioned the enforcement question, which is obviously very central because, as you point out, if there isn't enforcement, then the use of law to embark or try and engage on contentious issues is essentially useless. What are South Africans' options on this? And given that the United States has made its allyship of Israel very overt, and has actually condemned our cases, amongst other things, quote unquote, meritless, it is being seen as an almost certainty that if this is enforced by the Security Council, they will exercise their right to a veto. What do you think the implications of that will be for international law and for the people of Palestine? We obviously have a circumstance now where UNRWA funding has been cut because of these allegations that 9 or 13 of their staff members of a component of 30,000 were involved in the Hamas attack. And that obviously has serious humanitarian implications. What is South Africa? Is South Africa considered what the country can do in those circumstances? And then finally, we've seen a number of attacks on South Africa, including this allegation that somehow the ANC had received funding from Iran, and this was the basis upon which this case was brought. What do you make of that kind of concerted campaign again? In terms of in an attempt to portray the case as somehow financially driven by Iran, and how do you think it should be addressed, if at all? Thank you.
Gosh, you asked about 6 questions.
I know.
She's done, Minister.
Sophie Mkwena from the SABC. Minister, the president yesterday at the ANC Lekgotla, when he was wrapping up, he warned the ANC and its allies that there's going to be a backlash. And he went as far as pointing out that there's a likelihood that there will be interference with elections. As government, have you picked up something in relation to intelligence around that? The other question is in relation to today, the Security Council will be looking at a report on humanitarian crisis from Mr. Griffith, but it will also look at this ICJ. And I saw South Africa is part of countries that will deliver statement. What will be South Africa's message? And do you think waiting a month for the report by Israel, while on the other hand, there's heavy bombardment and loss of life, is something that the Palestinians can afford? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Her Excellency, now Israel, it seems it has a special definition.
Who are you?
Dawood Ali Al Arabi TV. Now Israel, I think Israel now has its own definition to the ICJ order, and the West too. We see last days some Western countries, they are stop funding the UNRWA in this very difficult times. And we see yesterday or yesterday before, special forces wearing a civilian clothes, and they stormed a hospital and they killed 3 injured Palestinians. Will South Africa will add all this to the case of ICJ? Thank you.
Karine du Plessis, I work for the Africa Report. I also have a few questions. The first question is the diplomatic ramifications of the ICJ case that South Africa brought, and have there been any concrete evidence of any ramifications? I mean, I see that Israel isn't buying grapes from South Africa anymore. They cancelled the grapes and flights, the airline cancelled flights. Have there been any other sort of concrete ramifications? And then I want to ask about the African Union, actually. The rotating chair, the African Union chair, there's been some contest about it this year. What is South Africa's view on as to which country, I think Morocco and Algeria have been at odds, should get the chair this year? Ethiopia, there's ongoing conflict there. We were crucial to the peace, or we facilitated the peace talks. But I hear in Amara it's not going so well in the Amara region. Is there ongoing intervention from South Africa's side? ECOWAS, we've seen some countries leaving ECOWAS. They've been suspended from the AU. What is South Africa's view on those countries, Mali, etc., and that conflict? And then the last question for the Minister. Minister, you're talking about the next administration. Will you be available for be going to Parliament again in the next administration?
Thank you, Mr. That was the last one in this round.
Okay.
Over to you.
You, Karine. You, Karen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think, Karen, that we are pointing to the dilemma that the global community has. The Genocide Convention was enacted following the Second World War, and its intention was to ensure that never again would we see the atrocities that were part of the Holocaust against Jewish people in Europe. This was the intention of the convention. Those who were to be the beneficiaries of the convention are today the ones who we believe are committing genocide. And what confronts the world is to marshal the ability to ensure that the stipulations of the genocide are actually observed. So I think this question is not one for South Africa. I believe South Africa has done what it can, and now the global community is the one that must answer the question. Do these conventions mean anything, or do we now have a world in which there's open license, where you can act as you will against any vulnerable group? I believe it fits very much into the discussion of UN reform that we have been trying for so many years to have as a concrete deliberation with a set of proposed changes, and we've not been able to have text-based negotiation on a proposed framework. I think now is the time for us to push forward. One of the things that I believe we should insert into our deliberations at the Security Council open debate is the need for peace enforcement, for the UN to actually be cajoled or persuaded to focus on enforcement and not only on monitoring, which it has done for so many decades. And in terms of further options, we must continue to engage friends, We do have supporters across the world. We must continue talking to them. We need to form a barrel of support in action supporting the cause of the people of Palestine. So countries such as Ireland, structures in the United States of America, we need to engage all over the world and begin to form a force that would advocate action, particularly action toward a negotiated two-state solution. I don't think we should leave matters as they are. We really need to be very active as South Africa. I have spoken to the representatives of Palestine, and I have indicated to them that the campaign must get more active from us, that the ICJ is not the victory that we want. It's a part of it. It's important, it's decisive, but the major work we need to do is to ensure the real protection of the people of Palestine, but most particularly that we have the eventuality of the state of Palestine, where people enjoy freedom, justice, and human rights. This is the task that we need to undertake, and we must focus, we must persuade, we must initiate. So whatever forum we're in, we need to actively agitate and work for support. On UNRWA, I think one of the things we're going to see is all sorts of modifications of negative action against the people of Palestine. And you're going to see it every day. There'll be a different intervention which seeks to undermine, hence our conviction that genocide is underway. And whatever means to achieve it are available to Israel, which we shouldn't forget is an occupying power with a duty to protect those that it has occupied. So this genocide totally contradicts the role and responsibility of an occupier. We have to lift out these issues through yourselves as the media, being honest about how you report and not reporting according to who you're funded by, but actually telling the truth of this situation. Because many are dishonest in their reporting. Very few mention the fact that Palestine is occupied. Very few mention right of defense. It's right of defense, but against those who attack you, not every civilian, which is the case currently. So we need to have an objective and open reporting, particularly us, South Africans. I think you're probably one of the most objective press in the world, and you need to use that power to good effect. If you are, really the children of Mandela, your task is to change the world, not to have it the same. So I think we need a global campaign in the interest of the people of Palestine. And what South Africa should do with the relief agency is to really try and secure humanitarian support. We should be speaking to the Gulf states. We should speak to other African countries that have the ability to contribute. We should look to our own resources. We should support the agency to provide humanitarian aid. We can't leave them as they are. And whatever we're able to provide, we should make it available. So I think there should be a massive drive to say to those powerful countries that have stopped funding, even though those accused workers have been suspended and investigations are underway. Again, you have collective punishment. We need to object to that, but we should also look at working with the world to secure funding from the South to assist this entity. On funding from Iran, I haven't had a chance to speak to the ANC to say whether they got funding from Iran. But I thought the story said that Iran has paid the legal fee. Something like that. Now, as far as I know, the legal team hasn't been paid yet. And I've not seen an offer from Iran for such payment. But I know from the WhatsApp side yet and what is said about me that the onslaught can be very fierce. You know, I've been called an ISIS member. I am a Hamas adherent. I hide under the cupboard. Iran is my master. You know, all sorts of stuff. And as I've said before, insults are the last refuge of itself. And we will get lots of attacks. But it's fine. It can be attacked, but we know what we are focused upon is the truth. The people of Israel are suffering from a form of colonized occupation, which is really something South Africans should never accept. So there's no funding from Iran, merely an allegation, and we expect even more allegations to come our way. All sorts of things. I was speaking to Minister Taylor, and I'm wondering, do I have enough protection? We're expecting all sorts. So I think we should just be aware that there'll be a lot of misinformation, a lot of, you know, fake news. There was some thing on X, X, which says that I'm saying, stand up, you know, you Arab nations. Why are you so quiet? Why are you leaving it to us? And it's as though I'm insulting Gulf nation states. But I never said anything like that. So, you know, I'm expecting all sorts of things. I think the president was in a realistic manner alerting the ANC leadership and the alliance to be aware that there'll be this kind of mixture. We've seen it occur elsewhere. And he said it may even straggle into our own national processes in the country. So we need to be alert. For example, I'm hearing now in the media that people are saying it's likely that we'll have an election that will have contested results. We've had excellent election administration. There's no suspicion of incapacity of the Independent Electoral Commission. Never has been. Why suddenly now? It's all part of a pattern. And we need to just be very alert to it. And we must have confidence in our ability to manage our own. On the Security Council, indeed, the matter is going to be discussed as an open session, so it will not just be the 15 Security Council members. Other member states that are interested will be invited and will be able to indicate their interest in making a statement, and South Africa will certainly take up the opportunity. I think it's important that we follow all for a report. Let us have that month. Let's see what report Israel will produce, and let's submit our own commentary, which will include the evidence of what we have seen since the ICJ ruling, because we cannot hide what we see and what we know is happening. I've spoken on the funding of UNRWA, and I think the hospital attack, the attack on hospital facilities, totally go against the grain of the ICJ ruling. But all public service institutions have been attacked in the course of this war on Gaza. And it's something that again offends the provisions of the Genocide and Convention. Because if you destroy hospitals, you're saying injured people must get no help. That people who need medical treatment must not have it. So essentially, you're sentencing people to death by virtue of your activity. And the shocking thing of the hospital attack was going in dressed as though you are medical personnel, and yet you have murderers intent. As we said in our case, the years that we've had of great concern about the atrocious experience of people of Jewish extraction under the Holocaust allowed a condition of impunity to develop. That whatever Israel does, we cannot quarrel with it. We need to change this attitude. It's clear we've created a platform in which atrocity is made to seem legal, and it cannot be. On Clary's question, well, Marina, I feel sorry for Israeli people that they don't get the delicious bread from us, because we are the best food in the world, as far as I'm concerned. On El Al, I don't think they were a major airline service into South Africa. So I think a lot of noise is being made. I saw somebody lifting down our flag. I don't know where it was. So it's just to make us afraid that this is the international reaction. South Africans shouldn't be afraid. Of course, we mustn't be foolish. We mustn't be careless in how we act, because we have our own national interests that we must have regard to. But the concern about our national interests mustn't make us a party to atrocity. That would never be acceptable to us. So, in terms of trade, let's look for other trade partners. Let's look at East Asia, for example. We've just successfully managed to return our sale of halal beef to Saudi Arabia, which is exciting. We're increasing citrus exports to the UAE. We've negotiated an excellent trade agreement for beef with Malaysia. Let's now look at Indonesia. Let's really grow our sector, particularly in the halal food industry, and use it as a platform for expanding trade. So I think there are opportunities, and we need to take them up. On the African Union chair, I'm a mere minister, it's not my remit. It will be the Assembly that determines that, not the Executive Council. I will be in focus with my colleagues, the minister, to get a sense of the direction. Our interest will always be a South African unity of Africa and having a consensus position which represents the best opportunity for unity. We wouldn't like to have a chair that will just lead to disputes, points of order, and objections. We want a chair who will be able to manage the meetings of the African Union and draw all our nations together and steer the agenda of silencing the gun and pursuing the priorities of agenda 2060. So I will not say more than that, but we are having discussions. On Ethiopia, our focus was TPLF, or Tigray region. We've not really played an active role in Amara and the other regions that are currently in conflict. At the Uganda summit meeting, we had opportunity. I met the Somalia minister and I met the Ethiopian minister as well. And my message was one: peace, security for Africa. The conflict just needs to underdevelop. And President met the President and Prime Minister, and the same message we conveyed. The implementation of the Pretoria Agreement continues, and we're pleased with this progress. The oversight team does provide us with reports on their own observations. Facilitators continue as part of the oversight team. And on ECOWAS, it is the matter for the region, and I think we would follow any statement. I see the Secretary General has not issued any statement as yet from ECOWAS. We will really be led by them on this matter. We are concerned, and it was raised at the NAM meeting, that we are not seeing the level of progress in the transitional measures that we would like to see with respect to Mali, Burkina Faso, and Tunis. So we really would like to see greater action. We will be having a PSC meeting in the course of the Executive Council at the AU, and these are some of the matters we'll be looking at. So,
Thank you, Minister. I was hoping you have covered all the questions that might be asked. So we'll take this round, Minister, and then we have questions that we've received also via WhatsApp, which we'll take immediately after this round. Thank you, Minister. Starting with you, Steve.
Good afternoon. My name is Tembile Cele. I'm with Bloomberg News. Minister, you spoke with Secretary Blinken on the eve of the ruling, and obviously both the US and the UK have close relationships, close cooperation with South Africa. Do you believe those two nations are complicit in the acts being carried out in Gaza? Are you still actively engaging them with a view to encouraging calls for a ceasefire or implementation of the ruling, given their influence over Israel? And then finally, maybe just on BRICS, can you give an update with regard to the status of the attendees? Who has formally accepted or declined, and is there a deadline for those responses? Thank you.
Well, okay, sorry.
Sorry, Minister.
Sorry.
Could
I'm
you use the mic
supposed
next to you?
to
I'm
wait.
told they are working.
Turkmen Terzi, Turkish Minister representing. Minister, Turkish Foreign Ministry issued a statement supported your genocide case, and Turkish President Erdogan had a call with President Ramaphosa to support your application. But has South Africa's ambassador in Ankara, Turkey, requested government of Turkey to intervene and support South Africa's case submission to ICJ, like an official, like Germany is supporting Israel? And second question, can you please share with us the content of discussion that happened between you and Special Envoy to Western Sahara today? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Salailo from Salam Media. My question also touches on our diplomatic ties with Israel, especially since the ICJ case and where they currently stand. And also, what is the latest regarding downgrading our consulate in Tel Aviv, and also the status of the Israeli embassy here in Pretoria?
Nawal Suleiman from TRT Arabic. My question, I have about 3 questions to ask. What is the next step for South Africa regarding the ICJ ruling? And how much will the government extend its support to Palestinians? Will South Africa be ready for any repercussion from the West after the ICJ ruling? And lastly, is there any talk with Hamas regarding the hostages and ceasefire? Thank you very much.
The last 2 calls to Diana and Yusuf. Over to Diana.
All right, thank you. Diane Hawker from Deutsche Welle. The question relates to something that you mentioned earlier, Minister, where you said that you'd received a lot of commitments and sort of words of support from other countries. In terms of concrete support, what is South Africa hoping to receive from allies or other members of the BRICS group when it comes to the longer term case, because we know that it will take quite a long time to finalize?
Sababato Masamo from the Associated Press.
You say your name so quickly. I write down your names because I keep a record for my book in future.
Sababato Masamo from the Associated Press. At the risk of repeating possibly a question that you've answered already, South Africa had made it clear that in the days leading after the ruling that they believe the ICJ ruling effectively ordered a ceasefire and for Israel to stop attacking Gaza. Is this still the official stance of the legal team and the government? And do you believe that the ICJ's preliminary ruling ordered an effective ceasefire? And as a follow-up to that, do you believe that the court had ordered a ceasefire and clearly that hasn't happened? And are you now saying that Israel is in breach of the ruling? And what steps will South Africa take, either at the UN or the ICJ, to confront this apparent disregard for the ruling by Israel?
Thank you, Minister. Those were the questions I think we are done with the room, and then we'll take after Minister has responded to the questions from social media. Thank you.
Okay, all right. On the U.S. Secretary of State, well, I'm not a court, not a judicial office. It would be the ICJ that would decide as to culpability and who and what. But I would draw notice to the fact that despite the sentiment expressed of a baseless case or without merit case following the ICJ ruling, the statement was that this reflects positions expressed by President Biden around the it was no longer meritless because it reflects what President Biden found that quite interesting. In our conversation with the Secretary of State, he did re-emphasize the strong belief that a ceasefire is necessary, but to them it's a temporary ceasefire for humanitarian purposes rather than end. He also stressed that America will work hard at the two-state solution issue, which they believe. With respect to the BRICS confirmation, 5 out of the 6 have confirmed. That is Saudi Arabia, UAE, Ethiopia, enthusiastically. Iran has confirmed that Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, which is now even a member of the bank, as well.
Yes, if I may, so if I may request, because some of the questions from Eyewitness News in particular, the next steps, so if I can just ask them so that you can respond to them. Is I'll start with that. They want to know what are the next steps in terms of the next phase of the case, given the judgment by the ICJ on Friday. What is the status of South Africa's complaint to the ICC? Has there been any update on how the court has received South Africa's submission? And has there been any feedback as to how this matter is being treated? And then this is for the minister. Does the minister believe that the ICJ order has a bearing, will support South Africa's complaint at the ICC? If so, in which way? The last one is how does the minister hope the matter will be received by the Security Council tonight in light of how it has been treated before? DG, if I can also just take quickly the Daily Maverick question. I'm asked to ask the minister if South Africa is involved in the mediation of the Middle East conflict and what the minister feels about Morocco undermining AU processes by winning the presidency of the UN Human Rights Council. Those are the questions, Minister, and immediately after the minister and the DG and DM have responded, we will draw this press conference to a close. Thank you.
Thank you, Lunga. I'll be quick. So before I get to the questions that they asked, I think Minister just asked me it's important just to reflect on the UNRWA issue. As ministers pointed out, that the court found plausible measures, found provisional measures based on the fact that there's a plausible case for genocide. And if you read the court, if you listen to the president outlining it, on behalf of the other judges, very, very clearly spoke about the harms that will occur to Palestinians without these provisional measures. So it's important to reflect on the overall case, as Karen has pointed out, that are not even proven. But the story behind that needs to be explored, and the media should reflect on that, because UNRWA has always been challenged, not now. It's always been challenged because UNRWA is a reminder that you've got about 5 million refugees that have been displaced. And the right to return is one of the key issues that's being challenged. We can't be linked from what's happening in Gaza at the moment, and the fact that we want to have a situation that Gaza is depopulated, which means that Israel has to return to the challenge through UNRWA at this point. So we need to look at the fact that UNRWA is probably happening in Gaza. That is obviously the question on the next steps. So we will be called in together with the registrar in the next couple of days, where the registrar will outline and to file papers on the merits. This is called a memorial. It will give us time frames to provide to do the memorial. And we're hoping that the time frame will be not longer than 6 months. But we possibly will be able to do memorials within 3 months. That's the time frame. So that's the real next step. That is just the first step in a very long process. The ICC update, I think, is the minister. And then I think also the security contribution. We thought it important, since we were in the Hague last week, to use the ICC. We met the president of the council as well as the prosecutor. And while it's imperative that we don't interfere in processes of independent organs, it is vital that we alert the draft concerns at the slow pace of action on matters that we refer to as urgent matters. The prosecutor assured us that this matter is in hand and is being looked at eyes on.
gave us an elaborate explanation as to personnel assignments and the work that the prosecutor is currently undertaking. What I felt he didn't answer me sufficiently on was I asked him why he was able to issue an arrest warrant for Mr. Peter and also Peter Prime Minister Hussein. He couldn't answer and did not answer that question. But I read into some of what he said that the investigations are still underway, and until their conclusion, we cannot comment on it. So we had taken the opportunity to just establish where we are with respect to the ICC referral. We asked them to keep us abreast of developments and that we won't be a nuisance, but we will keep on that. Thank you all.
Is involved in is South Africa involved in the mediation of the Middle East? Mediation, yes, yes.
Well, as far as we're aware, there isn't any mediation. There are attempts to keep referring to Qatar and the work we're doing in discussing hostage return and ceasefire, which Hamas know we are not part of those deliberations. We are in touch with our colleagues in Qatar who do keep us informed as to progress with respect to some of the work. Many other nations are involved. Egypt, for example, is playing a very important role, and we do call for the return of hostages, but we call for an end to the killing. This is extremely important as the people to have access to all services and goods that allow them to live.
And there was also
the Security Council, well, the current chair has called for an open session where this matter will be debated. I understand there has been some back and forth as to whether there would be a resolution that would be deliberated upon. My sense is there won't be at this point, it needs to be some time. But certainly reflection of the ICJ decision and the views of member states would be subject of the meeting. I would approve the meeting the evening of the ICJ meeting.
There was this one about the Morocco undermining AU processes.
Oh, yes,
by winning the president.
The processes of the AU, they were a candidate as South Africa, and there was an open vote by member states. The member states decided to elect Morocco as the chair, and Bafana Bafana expressed the joy of returning the favor by 2-0. So this is wonderful, very cool, and we hope Bafana Bafana bring in the country. The fact that they're now into the semi-final, us, that is big.
Thank you, Minister. Colleagues, we are mindful of the deadlines, of course, given that we convened this press conference in the afternoon. So we have come to the end of it, and thank you very much. Thank you, Minister SDG and yeah. Minister.